we've got a 4-point plan. It's a really smooth plan. It's something that is going to be very, very easy for you to get involved with. If you are not very experienced in campaigning, this is a really great way to kind of sharpen your teeth on it. If you've got a lot of friends or family or people you know who might be a little bit shy about campaigning but really want to get involved in this election, this is a great way to get them involved about something that really matters in your community. So at the last general election, one of the main things that changed people's votes was head teachers and teachers getting directly in touch with parents and telling them exactly about what was going on in schools as a result of the cuts. So our first aim with the general election is to reach every parent with facts about school funding. You've heard a lot of them just now from Andrew. We now need to make sure that people who are not sure where to vote for get hold of those facts and vote accordingly. So parents, head teachers and school staff in the last election organised their communities, putting school cuts at the centre of every conversation at their school gates, in the communities, in local news. There's a whole range of materials that we've created that you can download. There'll be a link going up later if you've not already seen it, where you can order materials to get people talking in your community, to really start thinking, well, actually, if schooling is what matters to you, what are you going to do at the ballot box? So reaching every parent with these facts. We are intending to leaflet as many school gates as possible to inform parents up and down the country what's really happening in school funding. So again, they don't get taken in by the nonsense that's being put out by the current government about how school cuts aren't as bad as they are. Now, we are aiming really, really high with this leafleting campaign. We're aiming to hand out 1 million leaflets in just over 5 weeks. Now, that is an ambitious target, but I think it's definitely the one that we can manage, and it's one that we need to try to hit, because if we don't reach 1 million people, how are we going to change 1 million people's minds to vote? Again, in the last election, we had 750,000 people change their minds. If we can match this, then we are going to have a real game changer in this election. The second part of this is building our election petition to grow the movement against school cuts. Now, the election petition works in 2 different ways. So the more that you guys can advertise this and the more that you guys can get people to sign up to this, the better. First of all, if we get as many people as possible signing the petition, it shows the government and it shows other political parties there's a real groundswell of movement specifically about school cuts. So it shows that there is power in the school cuts movement, which is going to make politicians think twice when they come to education policy. So that's the first step about the election petition. Another way of doing, another really important part about making sure we get as many people signed up to it as possible is that with this petition we can collect people's mobile numbers, and it just means we can keep on engaging with people, including reminding people to vote, keeping education on the agenda. So if we've got people who are willing to give us their mobile numbers to keep in touch with the campaign, for one thing it shows that they're interested in education and that they care, and for another thing it means that we can then use that to really drive home our message and to try and help them make a decision again when they're voting for education, hopefully broaden the message as well. The third thing is more focused upon the actual candidates that we're going to be looking at. We are going to ask every single candidate who's standing in this general election to pledge to fix the funding crisis. Now, this is not a complicated pledge. Very, very simply, this pledge is that they will work to ensure that every single school has enough money to fund education for every single child in that school. No ifs, no buts, no, oh, but this person is this, and no, this person is that, or we're in a funny area, or anything like that. It's just the fact that if you are in a school, you've got enough money to teach every single kid the kind of education that they actually need. So it's a very simple pledge. It's one that's very, very hard for candidates to say, no, I think that's a bad idea. It's also one that we can actually really hold them to account to. So once this is up and running, we are going to be able to track all the different candidates and politicians who've either made that pledge by having voters ask them, constituents ask them, can you make a pledge to save our schools, to stop the school cuts? And we'll be able to track and show publicly who has actually made that pledge and who has been ignoring everybody's emails and who has been ignoring their constituents' demands for this. So again, this is a really good way to hold all our local candidates all across the country to account and actually show what their priorities are. So essentially, each candidate's got a choice. They can either fix the school funding crisis or they can compromise on education. And this is what we really want parents and other voters to really realise about the people that they're voting for and then make that decision accordingly. Following on from this, the fourth and final part of this plan is holding these candidates to account on the pledge if they are elected. Regardless of the colour of government at the end of this general election, we want as many of these candidates who have promised that they will try to fix the school funding crisis to then follow that through. And I think that's something that we're going to be really passionate about. And this is, again, something that we're going to need your help on. So, 4-stage plan. Firstly, leaflet at the school gates, get as many conversations started as possible. Secondly, push the petition, try and gather as much information as possible, try and push the agenda of school cuts as much as possible. Thirdly, get as many candidates who are standing in this election to pledge to fix and resolve the school cuts crisis. Fourthly, hold those candidates to account when they are elected during the general election to make sure that school cuts after this general election doesn't become something that's a distant memory. We're really looking forward to working with you on this. We've got 5 weeks in which to change this system. We've got 5 weeks which I think we can definitely smash into and win and make sure that people who value education are voting for education.